What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to the channel for our first upload of 2024. I feel like it's a great starting point to do a new mock draft. After the completion of last night's semifinals, epic, awesome games. Committee got it right between Texas and Washington, between Michigan and Alabama. Both those games were great, even though I bet the loser in both of those circumstances. It's fine because both games were awesome. My only complaint was, why did the game start that late, especially the Washington and Texas game wasn't over till 2 o'clock after, a little after, it was like 2:15 my time. That is ridiculous. But outside of that, the football was great enough to keep me invested, to keep me from falling asleep on the couch, and it just got the wheels spinning. It's like, you know what, we got to do a mock draft tomorrow. We got to talk about some of these players that I'm seeing in these games, and no one elevated their stock more so than I think Michael Penix, the quarterback of the Washington Huskies, who I didn't not have him as a first-round quarterback, but I thought his age, I thought his injury history might push him out of the first round. I think it wasn't a foregone conclusion, but after what I saw last night, it was I made a tweet. It was like C.J. Stroud against Georgia. They always had this knock against Ohio State quarterbacks, but we saw C.J. Stroud just go toe-to-toe with a vastly superior Georgia Bulldogs team, and we're like, if that guy goes to the NFL, like, that guy's going to be great. But we just didn't know if that was going to be C.J. Stroud all the time. And what we're seeing pretty obviously right now with Houston is like, wow, C.J. Stroud's an absolute baller. What I saw Michael Penix do, regardless of the talent level of the Texas defense, I was like, that guy is, if he can play like that, even with the concerns, the injury history, that guy is going to be a little lock to go sooner than later, I think, in the first round to one of these quarterback-desperate teams. And that's exactly what we have here today. So without further ado, start out this mock draft. Pick 1-1. I have personally flip-flopped on what the Chicago Bears should do with Justin Fields. But for this mock draft, and actually my last couple, I've not had them go quarterback. I've had them keep and build around Justin Fields, especially with how the Bears are closing out this season. But I think it's big picture roster building. They are just improving the stock of Justin Fields to trade him, because you can go and get Caleb Williams at pick 1-1, and then you just get that rookie contract to operate. It's just more years to figure out. I don't think there's that much of a difference between, like, the best that we've seen of Justin Fields versus maybe the good of Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams will have a higher ceiling just because we've seen just an utter lack of consistency from Justin Fields. But I think the biggest thing is, I don't think Justin Fields has done enough to, like, play himself out of Chicago. I just think, honestly, at this point, it's getting a couple extra years of a rookie quarterback contract and knowing Justin Fields has cultivated a market for himself, a trade market. So that is what we're going to do there, especially because some of these teams are going to be missing out on quarterbacks. So you can see, hypothetically speaking, like when we get to it, once the quarterbacks go out the market, we can pencil in where Justin Fields will go. I guess the compensation will be interesting. I'd be shocked if they got a first rounder for Justin Fields, but they're definitely going to get probably a combo of like a second, third, second, and fourth. Conditional second that could turn into a first is probably going to be the best the Chicago Bears could wish for. But for right now, Fields gets traded. They draft Caleb Williams. Pick 2 for the Washington Commanders. I'm going to have them go Drake Maye. That could be a little bit of an awkward quarterback room, as you have literally the last 2 quarterbacks for North Carolina. And for Sam Howell, you know, he at one point in time, Sam Howell was projected to be a top quarterback draft pick. But Sam Howell's got benched. I think it's going to be the end of the riverboat run. He should be the next coach that gets fired. Just a terrible job done there in Washington. I don't know if you promote internally Eric Bieniemy to the head coaching job. I don't know what they're going to do. But I think it's safe to say, like, the ups and downs, the inconsistency for Sam Howell didn't do enough for the Commanders at this spot. They finished with the number 2 pick to pass on what is like a slam dunk quarterback prospect in Drake Maye. Especially with the weapons they have there, I think Drake Maye can hit the ground running. Like, Commanders have weapons. You got Scary Terry. You got a nice gadget player in Curtis Samuel. You start after this selection, you just start going all in, get some offensive linemen in there. I don't think it's going to be a drastic rebuild for the Commanders. I think they're a good coach, a good quarterback away, and you fill out that offensive line there a little bit from being, obviously, you know, they tanked a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, but you got some draft picks this year. You got some capital in terms of salary cap. Like, I don't think it's going to be a gigantic turnaround there for the Commanders, but they get themselves Drake Maye pick 2. Pick 3. This just feels weird, but I'm going to have the Patriots go Jaden Daniels, quarterback. They have to go quarterback. You just have to. I feel like, I don't know, like literally, it sounds like how you think it probably sounds. It just feels like the Patriots would much rather Drake Maye than a Jaden Daniels stylistically. But if it looks like the writing on the wall is true with Bill Belichick on the way out, it's not that hard to find now somebody. You know where you're picking. You know you're probably not going to trade up. You know you're probably going to be at that next pool of like Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix for your quarterbacks. You get an offensive coordinator. You look for your head coach around this idea. Like, we're going to have a dynamic, athletic quarterback. We do not need some 1970, someone that's going to come in and try to run like a 1970s offense. We need a modern-day offense that can maximize Jaden Daniels' talents, and I think to signal the end of the Bill Belichick era, to start whatever the next era ends up being, I think Jaden Daniels is a fine face to start that off. Now we have the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's kind of the theme for these next two picks, is that both these teams probably would be interested in a change at quarterback, but they've kind of backed themselves into a corner with the contracts they handed out and just the lack of, I think, of any other team wanting to trade and take on that contract. So they're going to have to pivot a little bit. And for Arizona's case, they're just laughing because they get maybe the pound-for-pound best player in the draft in Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver out of Ohio State, a bona fide wide receiver one. And I think you take Marvin Harrison Jr., you got Rondale Moore as like a gadget player. You got Trey McBride, who looks like a top 10 tight end in the league. Get that with Kyler Murray. That offense could surprise a little bit. I just literally watched them be unstoppable against it is a terrible Philadelphia Eagles defense, but you saw like the ceiling a little bit of what the Cardinals could do. Imagine if they had Marvin Harrison, they would have beat the Eagles by 20 more points. We have the New York Giants at pick 5. Very similar to the Arizona Cardinals. I think they probably want a new quarterback. Just financially speaking, you probably got to wait another year. So at pick 5, and look, honestly, at the board, what are you doing here? You're not going to go, I don't think you're going to settle for like literally the last quarterback on the board, even though he played outstanding. So I think this spot at pick 5, you go out and you get another weapon for Danny Dimes, and that is Malik Neighbors, the wide receiver out of LSU. Baller. There's no other way. Just another classic LSU baller. Would instantly walk in and be wide receiver 1 for the New York Giants and give you another year to hopefully justify that ugly contract you gave to Daniel Jones. Pick 6 for the LA Chargers. A little bit of a slight positional reach. Cornerstone usually goes, I'm a big fan of Kool-Aid McKinstry. I know he's not particularly the highest consensus locked corner 1, but I love the way he plays. I love how aggressive he is. I love his willingness to tackle. I like the height, the prototypical outside size. Maybe a little bit of reach at pick 6. You're probably not getting elite value here, but if you're the Chargers, like, what do you got to elite value by getting a tight end? Tight ends, we got to learn from Kyle Pitts a little bit. They're not plug and play, automatic, very much like corners. If I'm taking a risk, I think I'm going to go for the biggest need on that Chargers defense, which is the secondary that needs a complete overhauling. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry presents really, really nice value, even though pick 6 for a corner in a draft that doesn't have, that Sauce Gardner, that Jalen Ramsey type prospect might be a little rich, but I think that's going to be a pick at the end of the day when the dust settles. Charger fans will be really, really happy with. Pick 70, the Tennessee Titans, and I'm going to have them select Joe Alt, the tackle from Notre Dame. Kind of a pickup right now between him and Fasciano for who the top tackle is, and we're actually just going to keep rolling here and have the Jets get Fasciano. I think both those teams desperately need some tackle help. I think the Tennessee Titans kind of got burned a little bit on the let's just get an Eagles tackle. I'm sure he's going to be good. Did not work out. Did not work out with that absolute bust. So they need to get replenished. The Jets. Well, you can make the argument that Aaron Rodgers' season only lasted 10 seconds because their offensive line was absolutely terrible. So both those teams get really, really, arguably their biggest need at their spot there in the top 10. We have Atlanta at pick 9, and I'm going to have them get Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback out of Washington. Maybe it's recency bias, but I think when you watch Michael Penix at Washington, that's what he needs in the NFL. I think he's a quarterback that can operate off script a little bit. Seems like Atlanta's going to give Arthur Smith one more year, right? So you have the mobility that clearly I think Atlanta wants in their quarterback a little bit, but you need to have weapons in place. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Probably go prioritize maybe somewhere in free agency, get that other wide receiver, get that Calvin Ridley type player. You're laughing. I feel like out of all the schemes, all the landing spots Michael Penix could go, that would be the most similar to Washington, where you have some weapons for him to operate in. Teams that realistically need a core. Like Michael Penix, I don't think he'd be great in New England. I don't think he'd be great in New York. They just don't have the weapons there. But I think if you're looking at him in Atlanta, I think if you're looking at him going to, I don't want to say Vegas, because at least you have, Devontae Adams there. You have like a bona fide franchise guy. I think you look at Denver, potentially, with that wide receiver room. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, they keep that all together with Sean Payton. Like, those teams are a lot more favorable. I think he does need to go to a favorable spot for him to hold up, maybe maintain his value as a first-round pick. But, I mean, that can be said for a lot of quarterbacks. Unless you're like the 1-2 generational franchise guys that's going to transform your team, those don't always exist. Sometimes you need to go to a really, really good spot. I think that is Michael Penix going to Atlanta. Now, Chicago at pick 10 got Caleb Williams at pick 1. Now we're going to get him some help, and we're going to get Rome Odunze, wide receiver from Washington. Just ridiculous deep threat. Might not run 4.3s, but I think he's fast enough, strong enough, probably the strongest wide receiver of the bunch here. Just his deep ball tracking, his ability to go up and get the ball and come down with it is huge. And I think that complements what they have there in DJ Moore, what they have there in Cole Kmet. Hell of an offense for Caleb Williams to walk into. Solid offensive line, underrated offensive line, debatably, in Chicago. Pick 11, we have the Vegas Raiders. I'm going to have them get Nate Wiggins, corner from Clemson. Kind of wasn't sure where Raiders could go, given that the quarterbacks are off the board. I feel like, honestly, I just looked at the team, and I was like, they've really, really weird corner room. Like, a lot of guys that aren't over 6 feet tall, a lot of guys that don't have a lot of traditional traits for outside corners. Nate Wiggins brings that. He's 6'2". He's probably going to run the low 4.4s. Maybe, it's corner's a tough spot in the first round because it is one of the harder positions to transition from like a good corner to a good. It's not always, might take a year or two, but I think that for the Raiders getting better on the back end. I mean, you could debate maybe Dallas Turner at this spot going an edge rusher, but I think corner is a slightly bigger need for the Raiders. I'd love to hear. Raiders are one of the interesting ones. I'd say out of all 32 picks, Raiders would definitely make like the top 3 of like not too sure what I would go with. But I think like a traditional, bona fide, prototypical outside corner would be a safer pick, an interesting pick at 11. We have Minnesota at pick 12, and we're going to have them get Dallas Turner, edge rusher from Alabama. I think they got to get a little bit younger in their pass rush. Daniel Hunter's getting up there in age. There's been reports, on the fire sale last year that maybe his name was on that chopping block of guys they want to move on from. So it's just becoming that time. Some of these old heads on that Vikings defense, you got to start to phase them out a little bit and get some. And I think Dallas Turner, for my money, is the best pass rusher in this draft class. It doesn't have an elite pass rusher, but there's some good pass rushers. I think Dallas Turner versus Chop Robinson, Latu, like those are legitimate first rounders on almost every year. There's just not, I don't think that pass rusher that's worth a top 5 pick, which is a little bit rare. Usually there's one of those guys that kind of falls in the range. Like last year we had Will Anderson. But this year I think just around that top 10 pick, fringe top 10 pick is where the edges are start to go. And Minnesota gets a bit absolute dog bit. Dallas Turner is an awesome player. New Orleans at pick 13. I think they're thinking the same thing for edge rusher. I'm having to get Jared Verse, the edge rusher from Florida State. A little bit of a down year at Florida State, but I think given his body of work since he transferred from Albany, I think he's going to be one of those guys that does stand out a little bit once we get to the offseason and shows off his athletic abilities. Got to help his draft stock out. And we're also going to keep it going here for Denver at 14 and get Chop Robinson, who probably, I think, if you go by Bruce Feldman's freak list where he kind of looks at all the workouts, it seems like Chop Robinson might be the biggest athlete of the bunch. So you're getting a little bit of rejection here. Again, another player very similar to like Micah Parsons when he was coming out of Penn State. Doesn't have S tier. That is a locked first-round production. But all it's going to take is for him to run like a 4.4 at the combine. And people are going to go, oh, yeah, that guy's going to be an absolute monster. And I think Denver needs to help. Just continue to figure out that pass rush there. You got Cooper, you got Baron Browning. Are those guys going to be bona fide studs at edge? Are those guys going to be more of a part of a healthy rotation where you get something like Chop Robinson, throw him into the mix? I think edge is a desirable top pick target for the Denver Broncos. Pick 15, we have Seattle, and I'm going to have Seattle draft Jerzon Newton, the best D-tackle in this draft class. Another guy should test pretty well for the position there, and I think Seattle, just strengthening the interior of that defensive line, is going to be a way to go. Could potentially surprise for growth. I think Seattle, honestly, could be another good stop for Michael Penix, given the weapons that they have there, obviously with DK Metcalf, JSN, Tyler Lockett. I just don't think now at this point he's going to last that long to 15. Maybe Seattle wants to be aggressive, trade up for that quarterback, because it doesn't look like Geno's regressed to the mean a little bit, and maybe the prospects of him being their quarterback, their band-aid stopgap quarterback, longer rather than sooner is less desirable for Seattle Seahawks fans. Pick 16, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. And I thought long and hard that I think usually I have go Brock Bowers to the Bengals, but it's very much like that meme of like, do you go Penei Sewell and you can throw it to anybody, or you go with Jamar Chase and then you have a picture of Joe Burrow getting sacked. I think you gotta, especially with the tackle still on the board, Latham, Fuaga, Mims, Fatanu, like all those guys are legitimate first-round tackles. I think that's what you kind of need to bite the bullet and protect Joe Burrow, who they lost due to injury, and I'm going to have them get J.C. Latham, the powerhouse, arguably the strongest tackle in this year's draft class. You can play him at either side. Obviously, you have Orlando Brown left. Put him in there and plug and play at right tackle and protect the franchise quarterback. 17, Arizona back on the clock after selecting Marvin Harrison Jr. at pick 4 at 17. This is the weirdest pick of the draft still because no one really knows his health status. Has he declared yet? If he's going to be healthy, this is a great spot for him. Cooper DeJean, the great white hope at corner. He is a corner. He is a defensive back, but I think versatile. I think he can survive. Athletically speaking, I mean, return punts for Iowa should test well. Don't be biased. But again, just suffer that injury kind of late. Don't know if he's going to return. Don't know if he's going to declare. Don't know where his health status is going to be. If he's not going to be ready, it's going to be hard to project him in the first round. But if he is going to be ready, the body of work, what he has done at Iowa, is a first-round corner. Arizona desperately needs corner help, and that's kind of just a wait-and-see pick. Assuming he's healthy, let's be positive. That is absolutely a nice little layup there for the Arizona Cardinals. Now we have Pittsburgh at pick 18, who also just feels like every year they need corners, and we're not going exotic here. We're not really going off I think Terrion Arnold, converted safety, started as a safety, was recruited as a safety, so he could tackle well. I think he can give you outside, he can give you in the slot, which are two positions of needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Basically a player that you can figure out. You got two holes, an outside corner and slot corner. He would, at worst, be a great slot for you. At best, he will thrive and survive on the outside. Pick 19, we have the Green Bay Packers, and I'm going to have them select Fuaga, the tackle from Oregon State. Only reason why I go him over Mims is I think Mims is a little bit more of a developmental tackle, and it does seem like it could be on the outs there for Bakhtiari. And with Jordan Love looking very promising, you need like a guy right away. That can help on that offensive line. And that's exactly what you get. You got a pro-ready player there in Fuaga at offensive tackle. I think the rumors right now, it's like Bakhtiari's probably going to maybe hop and jump to the Jets. I mean, if that happens, maybe the Jets pick of getting Fashanu doesn't happen. I mean, a lot of that stuff still is hypothetically speaking, but it does seem like a gigantic need for the Green Bay Packers is offensive tackle, and Fuaga is a pro-ready guy versus going with more of a developmental tackle. Pick 20, we have Tampa Bay, and I'm going to have the Bucks get Latu, edge rusher here out of UCLA. I think once we start seeing the testing, he's projected to be the least athletic of the guys that are being talked about in the first round, but he also has easily the best production out of, well, maybe Dallas Turner, but he's right there for he is S-tier production. His production is ridiculous at UCLA, double-digit sacks. I think if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going to get more of a pass rush there going. Shaq Barrett's get up there in age a little bit. You have Troy Ochocinco who are continuing to develop, but I think someone like Latu at pick 20, really, really nice value considering. It wouldn't be a shock for him to go, pick 8, anywhere between pick 8 and pick 20. It's kind of a polarizing prospect. Pick 21, we have the Indianapolis Colts, and we're going to get them some help at receiver by going with Brock Bowers. You might look at this a little bit as like a free fall. I just think a lot of these sites have him slightly overrated, and I do think some teams are going to look at Kyle Pitts a little bit in terms of just positional value. I think that Brock Bowers is an elite talent. I think he's as good of a tight end prospect since Kyle Pitts. However, I just find it hard saying he's going top 5. Like maybe top 5 in terms of like power rankings. If you're grading the top 5 players in the draft, if he made your top 5, believable. But I mean, he's got to test better than expected. I think at the combine to like maintain it. He's absolutely still going in the first round. And he's almost a big slot as much as he is a tight. I think either way, you put him in the line with the receivers that are going, you classify him as a receiver, and I think 21 is a good spot. Nice safety net to grow and develop with Anthony Richardson. Pick 22, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'm going to have them go at wide receiver, and they're going to get Keon Coleman, the wide receiver to Florida State, 6'4". He's going to be one of those guys I really want to see how he tests. I think he's going to test better than expected for Elijah player. I mean, he's like a big-time athlete. I believe he was a basketball recruit as well as Michigan State. But obviously, elite jump ball, catch radius. I think you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars receiving core, he offers a different dimension than they don't currently have. And I think you have to, now you're getting in that little spot with Trevor Lawrence of like, okay, clearly he's not the generational prospect that we thought he was, but now we need to make a decision. Like, how much are we gonna pay him? How much do we know? Or are we gonna feel good giving Trevor Lawrence like $300 million? Let's get him some more weapons at wide receiver. Let's try to make this offense a little bit more prolific. Give him, how much help does he need to get to basically justify paying him franchise quarterback money? I think you still need to get another wide receiver in the mix. Keon Coleman can be that guy. Rams at pick 23, which is a hot pick. I have them going JJ McCarthy, the quarterback out of Michigan. Now, honestly, if I'm a Rams fan, this pick would suck because it's the first time we have a first-round pick. I mean, the board's not amazing, right? But you could go you could grab a tackle here. You could grab an edge rusher. You could grab Mims and develop him. You could grab Fatano, who could play tackle guard. Guyton, who's a little bit low on this site. You could grab Braylon Trice, Tuamaliau, Braswell. You could grab a corny, sure. But I think JJ McCarthy, 5-star recruit, you need to decipher when you watch him play at Michigan, how much of it Michigan not being an attractive offense, and how much is it the player? And I think that's going to be very tough to decide. But I think when you look at the Rams with McVay, all it's going to take for McVay to fall in love with a quarterback, the tools and traits. And it's expensive to think about it this way, but like if McCarthy can, with his athletic profile, with the 5-star traits that he does possess, can he be like a high-end Brock Purdy for McVay to succeed Matt Stafford whenever that is? And I feel like that's the logic in this pick. Is I think McCarthy would be a quarterback that McVay goes, yes, that could be my guy. I can win with that guy. And let's get him now. He can sit a year behind Stafford. He can get him caught up to speed a little bit. Maybe a sped-up version of what we saw happen in Green Bay with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. I hate doing it, but I think that McCarthy would, out of all the teams, like, he is a Rams and or Niners quarterback dream, and I think the Rams get him there at pick 23. Buffalo at pick 24, we're going to have them go wide out here and get Brian Thomas Jr., the 6'4 speedster out of LSU. You know, probably losing Gabe Davis. There is your debatable upgrade. Maybe he's a little bit more consistent than what we've seen with Gabe Davis. And who knows what happens with Stephon Diggs, who seems like it feels like every offseason might get traded away from Buffalo. Kansas City at 25. And we're going to have them get someone that can catch the football for Patrick Mahomes. And Emeka Ibuga, the wide receiver from Ohio State. Production down a little bit. But I think reliable set of hands is going to be the biggest thing Kansas City is looking for. Let's just say, for how this board is fall, please don't let Kansas City get Brock Bowers, I guess, at this point. That would probably be worst case scenario for the rest of the league, especially because Kelsey's having a little bit of a down year. So, let's still, Ibuka, still first rounder in a lot of the draft insider circles, especially if you look more so at what he did last year. But nice athlete. I think he'll test particularly well. Like, was a punt returner and stuff like that for Ohio State. But reliable set of mitts that you can build this wide receiver around him and Rashee Rice going forward. Philadelphia at 26 might not be the favorite pick. I know everyone wants a linebacker, everyone wants a corner, maybe a safety. I think Howie Roseman doing Howie Roseman things, plus you get the Georgia ties. We're going to go Marius Mims. I think arguably the biggest need for the Philadelphia Eagles is to get Lane Johnson's successor in place, and that is very much Mims, who is a project tackle, has some first-round traits, but he can't really, he's one of those guys that like really shouldn't go to a team where he plays sooner than later. And it's a perfect landing spot for Philadelphia. Has the Georgia ties, which are memes at this point. But for him to just be able to sit, play behind Lane Johnson, and if Lane goes down, which has been the most important piece of this Eagles offense, maybe even more so than Jalen Hurts, is when this offense, when Lane Johnson goes down, like doesn't move. So get his successor in place. I think at 26, like that is a higher Roseman pick. He's going to go build through the trenches, and there's a nice developmental guy for Lane. 27 for Detroit. We're going to have them get a JT Tuimaliau, edge rusher at Ohio State. And I think, again, 5-star traits, kind of like JJ McCarthy. Maybe not elite production, but edge is a need for the Detroit Lions, and put him on the other side. Long-term projection with Aiden Hutchinson sounds pretty damn scary for the Detroit Lions going forward. Houston at pick 28. We're going to have them get Troy Fautanu, the offensive lineman from Washington. This guy can be either a tackle or a guard. No one's really 100% sure where he's going to fall, and I might as well make this pick as well because it's the exact same thing I'm about to say. In Graham Barton to the Miami Dolphins out of Duke. Both these guys are just offensive linemen. I think they can play at tackle. A lot of people, because of lack of arm length, think they're going to kick inside the guard. I think for both of these teams, that is a value pick. That is a position of need, and those are two really, really solid players. Maybe not the highest ceiling, but pretty decently high floors with a low bust rate. Dallas at pick 30. We're going to have the Cowboys get Kamari Lassiter, the corner from Georgia. Right now for the Dallas Cowboys, probably going to get a little worried about being able to afford everybody. That's supposed to be pretty expensive in that secondary. More so for Lassiter, can play, find his playing time sooner and later as a slot corner, and also has some traits to potentially develop into an outside corner. As long as Al Harris remains in that building, especially if like Dan Quinn gets a head coach job, they're probably just going to promote internally Al Harris, who's an outstanding DB coach, arguably the best DB coach in the NFL right now. Getting him a young corner, I think, for Dallas to continue that dominance in that secondary is going to be huge. San Francisco at pick 31, I'm going to have them get a maybe slight developmental tackle in Tyler Guyton, the 6'7" monster from Oklahoma. I just think tackle, kind of view this as maybe you hope he can kick out and play right tackle sooner than later, but long term, much like Philadelphia getting Lane Johnson's successor, someone like Tyler Guyton sitting behind a great Sooner legend in Trent Williams, could be just a nice forward-thinking pick there for the 49ers. And finally, at pick 32 of the Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to go Chris Braswell, edge rusher from Alabama. One of those guys that is projected to test incredibly well. He was SEC D lineman of the year, had big-time production at Alabama. Alabama Pipeline, that's a comfortable school for the Baltimore Ravens to be making their picks. I think Braswell is going to be a riser. As long as he can stay healthy, there's a lot of potential there for Braswell for the Baltimore Ravens. They continue just to hit on late-round defensive steals and keep their unit as the best in the NFL. So there you go, guys. There is a post college football semifinal before the final mock draft. We'd love to hear what you guys think about your team's picks in the comment section below. Did I smash it? Did you hate it? Did you gag a little bit when I said JJ McCarthy? Huh? Ravens fans, let me know everything in the comment section below. That will do it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace out. Love ya. Have a good one.